Good afternoon. Welcome to our February 11th Investing in Infrastructure Advisory Committee. We are of sufficient numbers that we can have quorum, and so I'll call the meeting to order. We're joined by Councillor Ennis and Mr. Cooper and Mr. Becker, and our staff members, Victoria, Allison, and Derek, and members of the public. Good to see you. For a few seconds, I'll ask for you to join me with a moment of reflection. Thank you. Any disclosure of pecuniary interest around the table? Hearing and seeing none, if something should arise, feel free to mention it in the future. Public participation is next on our agenda. Members of the public are encouraged to provide the committee with their comments and questions. Presentations must be prearranged with legislative services before the agenda is released. Members of the public who wish to make a deputation about a specific agenda item at the meeting must register in advance with the Legislative Services Coordinator by 4 p.m. on the day before the meeting by contacting D. Bruce at meaford.ca or phoning 519-538-1060 and asking for extension 1112. Presentations are limited to 10 minutes and deputations are limited to 5 minutes. I don't believe we have any presentations today or deputations. So that being the case, we'll jump right into the meeting, and the first item is to approve the meeting minutes from back on November the 5th. The recommendation is that the minutes of the November 5th, 2025 meeting of the Investing in Infrastructure Advisory Committee be approved as presented. And everybody has been distributed with the minutes. Could I have a mover and a seconder to put them on the table? Moved by Michael, second by George. Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, excuse me, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to note, one of the members who wasn't able to make it today did note a small error in the minutes. And so Mr. Rayum and Mr. Jowett were mixed up. And so the attendance will be corrected on the final version.
Oh, okay. Well, we have Mike and George mentioned in the minutes. So we're good that way. Is that?
Yes, sorry. Mr. Jowett was not here. Craig Jowett was present at the meeting and was not marked as such. So that will be corrected in the final version.
Okay, all right. Yes, all right. That's fine. Okay, any discussion concerning the minutes? If not, could I have your vote, all those in approval of accepting the minutes? Good, thank you. Now, we'll jump to number 6 and under items for consideration. Welcome, Craig. We have a report, and it is entitled "The Final Report of the Investing in Infrastructure Advisory Committee," and I'll get the recommendation moved and seconded before we get into it. Okay, the recommendation states that the Investing in Infrastructure Advisory Committee recommend Council of the Municipality of Meaford to number 1, Consider the feedback and observations outlined in the report, together with the feedback received from the advisory committee in response to the report, in the development of a future committee structure. And number two, direct staff to incorporate this feedback into future recommendations to council regarding the proposed committee structure. Could I have someone move and second that recommendation to get it on the floor? Eric, thank you. And Michael, fine, thank you. Okay, and you have the final report before you. And Allison, are you going to lead us into this, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you. I will just briefly remind the committee, as you heard at our November meeting, that council had directed staff to begin the process of disbanding our various advisory committees in advance of the 2026 municipal election. In beginning that process, we thought maybe it best to gather the feedback of the members who've been on the committees to date. And so to see what went well and what could be better in a new structure of committees going forward, as you read in the report. So just as a brief overview, the report provides a history of the committee and staff's perspective on some improvements that could be made to the overall committee structure and some questions for the committee's consideration. And with the chair's willingness, I'm hoping that we can have just a bit of a discussion if there's feedback that you'd like to provide in response to those questions, or if you have any questions for me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Do you want to elaborate somewhat, you or Victoria, on the staff feedback part of the report, and then I'd like to get into the committee feedback after that.
Certainly, thank you. I think one of the things that staff observed, and as the members of this committee will know, the faces around this table on the staff side have changed through your term that you've been here with us. I think in that change and in that turnover, some things that are sort of best practices in committees got lost or not adhered to in the way that we'd like to see them adhered to. And so staff's recommendations here are really sort of the general tenets of what we'd like to see in committees going forward. And so we might hope to see the overall plans, the really big plans, the 5-year capital plan, things like that, being brought to the committee and being sort of the underlying framework on which the committee is operating. And so the committee having a real baseline understanding of this being what staff are working toward, and then committee being able to provide feedback on staff working toward that mission. I think sometimes when we don't have the guiding framework or when we don't feel like we're tied to a plan, the gap can be filled in sort of a avoided way. And so we can get off track. We can lose sight of where we're trying to end up. And so this offers some perspective on what happens next. And so structuring the committees to align with municipalities' work units. For something like infrastructure, it's pretty clear cut, right? This is probably the most clear cut of all of our committees, that you are working on the physical infrastructure. But does that tie in with, say, sustainability, which itself at the outset had its own committee that ultimately was disbanded early because we couldn't get quorum with the committee and staff didn't really have content because the municipality doesn't have a sustainability committee or a sustainability team, rather, a department within the municipality, because it's everybody's responsibility. And so how can we align council's strategic objectives with the work that's being done, with how advice is being provided to council on that work? I hope that's clear. The other thing that we identified was making sure that the committee is aware at various points in the year of what staff needs from them at that time. So there's a best time in the year to bring forward a thought for a budget contribution, for example. And while we often talk about budget in December and January, if there's an idea for a project that should come forward, it's great if we know about that in April so that staff can plan and plan out how much money is needed and what that would actually look like. So making sure that they're aware of the different points in the year when we're looking for different kinds of feedback, that the annual work plans are seen by committees at the beginning of the year and again at the end of the year to follow up on what's happened. Making sure that there's a member of the leadership team assigned to be a sort of a point person. So at this committee, it's great to have Tori because when you have a question, there's an answer. At some of our committees, we haven't been able to fix a leadership team member to the committee. And then finally, just making sure that there's consistent onboarding and training for members. And so members understand their own role, the role of staff, the role of council, and how to move things forward in the committee if that's their interest. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, thanks, Allison. Anything further? Victoria, did you have anything to ask or to mention just at this time? And go ahead.
Through Councillor Greenfield, I don't have anything to add, but I'm happy to be involved if there's any questions with regards to that.
Thank you. Thank you. I'll ask the committee members, first of all, do you have questions about what's mentioned in this staff section of the agenda? Want to get into your feedback, of course, later, but if you have any questions about what staff is suggesting, go ahead. Michael.
Mr. Chair, thank you, and thanks to staff for the ability to be here as a committee and to be able to comment. And I think that my thoughts would perhaps align with the thoughts of staff in, how do we go ahead? But as a committee, trying to drive staff, or at least to advise staff, is a pretty difficult thing to do because you need to be involved or at least have access to all of those things like the 5-year capital plan, which is public, but should it be a 10-year capital plan because 5 years is pretty short when we try and get money, but also the DC background studies and how they align with council priorities, and those things change between councils. So, we could suggest a priority from an infrastructure perspective, but it might not align with a council priority, or it may not come in as a funded idea through DCs. So there is a full spectrum of things to consider as a committee, and then to be given the idea that we could actually influence any of that is maybe a little bit of a stretch, because I think it's more like we're involved in a commenting capacity, but not necessarily on a decision making capacity, because so many things tie up. And so from going forward, I think that it does need to be more of an all-encompassing vision, but I think it's going to put a lot more importance on meeting as a committee than every other month and then trying to advise, because things change in a lot shorter time period. So I think there's value in it. I think there's value in a committee going forward, but I think there's also I would place a higher importance on seeing more of a total picture of what investment in infrastructure is in the longer term. So if that makes any sense, let me know, or I'm open to conversation about that.
Thank you. Anyone else? Any comments? So, Eric?
You three, Mr. Chair. I share much of the same thoughts. And as I sort of think about it, I get kind of hung up on figuring out the best way to make the committee actually useful. If you look at just the investing in infrastructure committee specifically, an obvious potential topic would be the wastewater in investments that we're looking at. But trying to figure out how the committee could actually provide value to that project, I'm not sure. I don't know, like perhaps from the staff side, like what kind of input they would need to feel like they're able to, do that job better or in better alignment with how the community's feeling or wanting. So it's kind of tricky to figure out. I think at the very least, there could be some really good potential for using the committees to help share and spread information. I think ideally that the members of the different committees would have some form of subject matter expertise and maybe even have some that don't, so you can figure out how everybody's doing and get a good spread across the community, but use that as a way to disseminate information.
Yes, Victoria.
Through Councillor Greenfield, I appreciate the comment of using it as a way to provide information to the community, because I think that this committee has been good for that. But I think that another piece that was discussed when these were created, that is identified in this report and it has been discussed, is that finding the way to allow for the comments from this committee to get to council, so that when council's making their decisions on different items, they're taking the committee's comments and, in essence, the public comments into consideration as part of their process. And so I know that originally there was a desire, and I think continually going forward, there is still this desire, but just to get better at it, is when we're bringing forward master plans, 5-year plans, those longer vision plans, and how we're coming up with our projects. And if there are projects where decisions need to be made that do have significant impacts on residents, that's where this committee could very much be the voice of residents and provide that to council. So then when they're making their decision on those items, they're getting this information along with the technical information that's coming to them already, so that when they're making the decision, they have both pieces instead of sometimes having to wait for that public input. And so I think that could really strengthen some of the decisions that get made through council. There haven't been that many of those long range plans come in front of even council in the term of this committee, but I think going forward, we recognize the importance of those, and there definitely some coming through in the next couple of years. And so I think that I can see benefit of committees like this in helping support those and making sure we're getting the public input in addition to public processes directly in front of council as they make their decisions.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Eric, go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, just to add on to that, as now a member of council, like I'm thinking of situations where, like through the budget, if we're in a situation where we're, debating particular machinery, as somebody who doesn't necessarily have machine operating experience, it's hard for me to feel as though I'm making a decision on that. So items kind of like that, if we're able to design a mechanism where, a panel of community experts are able to weigh in on things like that, to make the decision-making process easier for everybody involved, that would be good.
Yes, Craig.
Thank you. If I understood Mike correctly, I'm in agreement with him about knowing more information so that we can actually make a good observation on what we do see. If we don't see anything, then it's difficult to make a good observation on what might be there, what might not be there. And the main case in point to me is the Trowbridge Street work. The geotechnical work that's being done, going from a budget of 4 or 5 million to 9 or 10 million is a big leap. And I think if we were able to see the engineer's report of the work that went on already, that would certainly help me. A farmer that's been working in the clay for 50 odd years or more, or a real estate fellow that understands land, and I'm a geological engineer, and other people have different experience. We can at least observe what's going on and advise the council who we know. So look into this because that looks good. We're looking into this because we're not sure exactly what's going on. So for a committee to be useful to council, the committee has to be well-intentioned and also needs to be well-informed.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, information is so important, and without at least some information, you have no idea where you might be going, or what the intentions are, what the planning stage is at. Uh, is this project in the near future, or is it going to be a couple of years away, or, yeah, Mike, did something to add?
Yeah, thank you. I did have a question regarding becoming a conduit for community input. Kind of holds you out there, and we know what can happen on the internet. Suddenly you can get inundated like a counselor. Maybe you don't want that. So, not that I'm opposed to receiving information from people, but also to expect that we would get a real whole fulsome grasp of what the entire community is looking for is probably not going to happen. But I think that just through random engagements, whether in conversation or on the street, or people just don't know who we are. That if they're not informed, again, it's all about information. So can you talk to me? Yeah, you can talk to me. What do you want to talk about? And all that kind of stuff. But will we get enough information that is valuable? And I think from my perspective on this committee, it's just from my career in real estate on the street, and it's only knowing what is perhaps coming before council knows what's coming, because I know what the developers are doing, and they're calling me and they're asking me, and I'm going, okay, I can speak from that perspective, but from the perspective of every community member who wants to weigh in on certain subject material that they may not be educated in, is asking a lot of a committee of 5 or 6 to say, here's how we're going to go forward. We'll be able to contribute some data and information, but it might not be the kind that would sway the works people to say, oh, we gotta do that or do this. So I'm not sure what the answer is. I'm just saying I'm not sure that I would also depend on that kind of information coming through this committee. Happy to comment on it when I get it. This is the last meeting. Not sure what's going to happen going forward. Thank you.
Thanks. I've had the belief that in the past, the committee is anxious to be involved, is anxious to comment, and I never got the impression that they want to take over something, but certainly the impression has been there that, hey, we'd like to have a general grasp of what project A, B, or C are all about. If I may ask, council is looking at a couple of very large plans coming forward, water and wastewater master plan and the harbor and downtown master plan. Now, certainly water and wastewater are obviously infrastructure. You can't get any much more infrastructure than that, except for maybe roads and bridges. But I'm wondering, the harbor and downtown master plan, I mean, I'm sure we're going to, one of the main objects of that is the dredging situation. And to me, that's, I'm not sure if that's actually infrastructure, but it's, I think it could join. And when you get into recreation, you get into facilities, of course, and that is definitely infrastructure. So I'm just wondering if something like those studies, would they be applicable for this committee to at least have some input to them?
Through your worship, speaking specifically to the water wastewater master plan, it follows a very specific mandated process that involves multiple public input periods. And so I see that as being a really good opportunity if this type of committee exists to bring the information that's available at those key points to the committee for input, because I think it's a great way for council to get that additional input in addition to the other public consultation that happens. With regards to the downtown and harbor master plan, that doesn't follow the same process or doesn't have the same requirements, but may follow a similar process. And I can imagine will involve a fair amount of public input. That project doesn't fall specifically under my team, but that doesn't mean that it doesn't have infrastructure included in that plan. And so I would say that depending on kind of the direction of the plan and the information coming from it, I can very much see at points there being touch points with the committee of infrastructure to provide information and get any input that is needed at certain points. And I can also see it going to other groups as well if there is input that is needed from a different viewpoint.
Thank you. Yes, go ahead, Mike.
It's a little bit of an off-topic question that I have for the two counselors present, but did your priorities get adjusted following the purchase of that employment lands on Muir Street, Gray Road 7? So now there's a tremendous opportunity for introducing and inviting new industry to Meaford. And I wonder if you've changed, if there has been some change in the council priorities given that initiative.
Well, attracting new industry is always on our list, of course. And I think you could likely read in a number of our strategic priorities. Maybe they would all cover that. Certainly sustainability and in inspiring economic advantages. They could all fall into that. Here again, I'm not exactly certain that the next council will keep the existing strategic priorities, or are we going to be looking at at least revisiting that list and maybe adding to it or condensing some of them? I think that's up to the next council and staff to make that decision.
Well, it's kind of the point I was making. We look at a 5-year capital plan, but if your priorities change, that plan gets adjusted. Now, there's always capital plan immediate needs. There's always things that have to be done. And then you throw something new into the mix, which says, okay, we have to service those lands. That wasn't in the capital plan. But if you're going to attract industry to service land, well, you have to have it serviced. So that means you're going to have to, first of all, create a plan of subdivision and service it. And then how do you get it all surveyed and all of those things. It's one thing to say we've got land for you. It's another thing to say you can start building tomorrow. So expenses will be incurred that weren't in the capital plan at the beginning of council term. So these are the sorts of things that if we as a committee are encouraged to comment on, then a committee such as this needs continuance. And I suspect that it'll be 6 or 8 months before there's another committee invite. So if I'm still around, maybe I'll get invited.
I'm certainly hoping that all of you gentlemen would consider coming back to help us out in the next term, or shall I say, coming back to helping those on council in the next term. Yes, Eric.
Thank you. I think I've said before that for me, I think like the strategic priorities sort of as they are a little bit, like there are sort of sub projects within them, but like I would like to see the broad categories of strategic priorities in the next council be a little bit more focused on kind of like measurable results. And then that way you could have your advisory committee structure sort of underneath that, supporting that, following that along, and making sure that everybody is accountable towards that. And so under these, like some do have very specific things like municipal tree inventory, just kind of on the top line under ensuring sustainability. But then you have also climate change mitigation and resiliency. So if you had an advisory committee maybe weigh in on, okay, well, what is like an achievable, practical amount of climate change mitigation and resiliency, and how are we going to measure that? And really help to try and inform that in a way that residents in the community will feel good about and feel like it was, worthwhile endeavor and pursuit, I think would be a really good thing. And it just makes, in my own experience of being on advisory committees as a counselor or not, it is really hard to feel like when you come to the meeting, you've actually like done a thing, that you've contributed to the project, as opposed to just sort of reviewed it and gave a couple of comments. So if there's a really clear directive of like, here's advisory committee, this is what we need from you, this is the type of information we're seeking, and the kind of input, I think that will go a really long way to make the information more useful, and thereby sort of reduce the feeling of everybody kind of spinning their wheels on some of these things.
If there's no more comments. Pardon?
Don't be too quick.
Don't be too quick. No, well, I'm certainly open for
Well, Eric's
questions or comments.
sorry, Arlie, but Eric's comments just just brings me to thinking that there's only so much money. So all of these things have to get tied back to the budget, because we're only always talking about money. We could do all the things we want if we had enough money to do it, and then say, well, here's our wish list. We used to do this with the Eaton's catalog. There's your wish list on December the 1st, and you got to narrow it down to 3 things, right? So what is it going to be? And is it going to be providing industry, or at least somehow enabling an industry here that provides secondary and tertiary opportunities? So do you spot pick the one thing that's going to make the most sense, and then hope that, and through the way things work, commerce works, that more things will happen? So if that's the case, then let's identify what those most important things are that will create spin-off benefits. And it's almost always development of real estate, sorry, but that's the way it is. And you have somebody that's willing to invest millions and millions of dollars, and that might be 6 different people that are building subdivisions for people to live. And if they choose to live here, they either have a job or don't need one, but regardless, they all contribute, and perhaps there will be more. So can we pick and choose those things, those industries that we would like to attract to Meaford on our new employment lands? And that is the key, because when you employ people, you will create secondary and tertiary incomes. So I would like to know how do I comment as a committee member to council, because I'm not commenting directly to staff, we're commenting to council, that in a manner they will say, yeah, this probably makes sense, why don't we chase this, and then direct staff to understand it and provide their comments back to us. And that's where I think Eric was going with it. If I say something, am I going to be heard? And if I am heard, will it be commented on? And if it's worth commenting, will something happen?
I agree. I think in the past, there haven't been enough suggestions from not just this committee, but any of our committees. There haven't been enough suggestions to go forward to council. And I think, you know, every committee has very good people on it, and they've all had some very good ideas and very good suggestions. And that's something I would like to see more of in the future. Now, you mentioned industry and a particular industry, and I would expect as far as new industry, new whether it be small industry, secondary industry, light industry. A lot of that will depend upon what's being proposed up at the 4th Division our Army base. And so I'm not, you know, that will hopefully have a positive effect on industry in our urban area. We don't know about that,
Well, we don't know about that, so.
but regardless of what happens with that project.
We know that, sorry, I'm gonna just, before I forget, because that'll happen, we know that the Bruce is planning further expansion. And Owen Sound has benefited from some of the most
Yes,
recent work
yes.
where there are industries that are building parts and supplying materials for the expansion. But we've also heard that from our federal government that there will be an invitation, or at least it's been more than an invitation. There's going to be car manufacturers coming to our country that were not here in the capacity that they were before. And all of those car manufacturers, they don't do everything in one building, and they sub out a lot of things. And we have an opportunity to create some really specific items. And the County of Grey is so excited that we have now got employment lands under in our banner that they can promote moving to this country or to this county and this town to create perhaps a key small industry. You said clean industry, and most of them are now. And then to speak to your comments about environmental consideration and sustainability, well, we've got an opportunity through the planning to say, your building has to have solar panels on it, and you must capture all your rainwater, and you must do this, and and I don't think you'd be met with a lot of pushback on that. So we have the opportunity to not only attract industry, but attract smart industry. And that's what I think we should be pushing for, if you want my recommendation on that 20 acres of land. And we live on Georgian Bay, one of the cleanest bodies of water. And why don't we create a situation where we study the Georgian Bay clean water and all of those kinds of things. And you can get money from wherever for educational facilities. So I could go on and on. I'll let others.
Yeah, I certainly agree with clean water in Georgian Bay. But, George, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've just been doing a lot of listening so far, and I've heard, Mike's comments there about attracting industry, and then Eric's comments about environmental and sustainability. And one thing I'm wondering was, there were advisory committees for really both of those two subjects, right? There was the Growing the Economy Advisory and the Sustainability Advisory. And obviously, both of those two factors may influence how infrastructure is invested in. So maybe going forward, I'm not sure if there's a way to have a little bit of overlap between those committees and make sure we're all kind of having the same conversation and can really provide one coherent, consistent message or advice back to council. So that may be something that gets looked at going forward with those committees. Thank you.
That's a great point, and I'm jumping in right away because during my tenure on council, we often talked about, and I don't know if it ever happened, but we talked about doing a really big round table with staff, but not just management staff, but the guys driving the trucks and the guys turning the valves on the wire, on the fire hydrants, and doing all of those things. Because it's only when you're all together in an environment where nobody's pointing fingers that you just learn about what the roadblocks are and what the opportunities are and how to work together. And I think that's more important than ever right now, especially because USA is not our largest trading partner. Well, I guess they still are for a little while.
Eric?
I was just gonna add to George's thought. I've been pondering that, like how to get advisory committees to sort of look at, to take their sort of mandated lens and apply it to each issue. And I've just been like going back and forth with that in my head, trying to figure out if that is an avenue for more confusion or if having like really like sort of discrete advisory committees where they kind of have a lane and then they like I haven't been able to figure out which one I think is going to be the most effective. But I have found that at least in the last while, they've been a little bit too siloed, where it's not clear exactly what's going on within the different lenses. So that'll be something for staff and council and future council to put a lot of thought into how to best sort of operationalize that those relationships.
Good. All good stuff. Well, we do have a recommendation on the floor and, yes, Allison?
If I may, in closing, I just wanted to add, as you might have read in the report, there will be an anonymous survey distributed by email within the next couple of weeks, and that will go to all of the committee members. And so if there's anything that you come to sort of in reflecting on this conversation today or anything that you'd like to add that you didn't, there is another opportunity to do that. And then that will be included in the final report to council, the results of that survey. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. If there's nothing further, can I get your vote on this recommendation? All those in favor of the report? Thank you. It's carried anonymously. Yeah, now that we don't have any items for information, I'm number 8 is committee inquiries, and before we get into this, I'm going to ask staff. I'm only guessing that perhaps our recent budget discussions may have created some questions from some of our members, and I'm just wondering if they had some, if you would consider entertaining them at this time.
Through Councillor Greenfield, I'm happy to provide as much information as I have available to me. Obviously, I can't speak to all the divisions, and there's infrastructure that probably spans in other locations. But if we do have some questions, I'm happy to answer them. Anything I can right now.
Thanks, Victoria. Yeah, would be just pertaining to public works, infrastructure, that kind of thing. And I would expect a general response from you. It doesn't have to be detailed. Does anyone have any questions about council committed to quite a number of projects for 2026, and I don't know if you folks have had a chance to check them out or not, or but if you have any questions, go ahead and we'll try to relieve any fears that you might have.
Sure, if I may. Sorry, I'm not going to ask you if you have enough money to go forward with all the things you want to do this year, because you never do. But if you could identify your top 3 items for the next 2-3 years that you would prioritize given your budget.
So great question. Through Councillor Greenfield. We are currently going through finalizing our this iteration of our asset management plan. And through that, it is very much continuing to identify some of our shortfalls in replacement of our infrastructure. And so I would say there's many places where we could be investing in our infrastructure, but having the lens of public works, I think we all recognize that our roads, bridges, and water, wastewater are infrastructure that's used by all that contribute to it and are needed on a daily basis, recognizing that water, wastewater is only funded through the users themselves. And so if that infrastructure isn't properly funded in the long term, it won't allow for those day-to-day actions to happen anymore. And sometimes we take them for granted because that infrastructure just exists. While maybe not always in the best condition, it does exist. And so I would say continuing to invest in those areas is very important so that our residents can continue to do their normal day-to-day actions. I do understand how our facilities and parks and rec infrastructure provide community to Meaford, and it also is equally important to have that in a municipality. But I think really making sure we're focusing on the infrastructure projects that have been identified, and also focusing on maybe what council or the community recognizes is out of reach for us right now, if that is something that is being looked at so that we can properly plan. I know that didn't answer 3 identified projects, but I think really just continuing with the plan of replacing our bridges and our roads and our water, wastewater infrastructure is the key to making sure that residents continue to kind of see the consistency that they are used to.
Great.
Yeah, in response to that, what water and wastewater, and the budgeting and the attraction of the industrial park and that type of thing and sustainability. Part of my career, and I'm retired now and I'm out of it. I don't own any of that company anymore, but what we did was treat sewage in a modular fashion. So down from a municipality, but to the size of a small village, 1,500 people, that type of thing, golf courses, truck stops, campgrounds. And we reuse the water on site for irrigation, truck washing sometimes, and even in one location, toilets and urinal flushing. It saves a lot of money. You don't have to be connected to the sewer. The big issue is, and it's very accepted by the Ministry of Environment. The big issue is that municipalities don't like this type of thing. They want, the municipal sewer and the municipal works, and that's agreeable. When you're on private property at a golf course or a campground, that type of thing, they cannot connect to the sewer, but they need to treat the sewage to a higher standard. But for something like an industrial park, if the sewer is not coming, this is the type of thing that can be introduced so that sewage can be treated properly on site to a very high degree, and usually higher than municipal standards, because you're on private property and you got the Ministry of Environment looking down your back all the time. So when, for budget constraints and for attraction of industry, and it could be as an interim 10-year program before the sewer comes, you can still get the industry in, get people working. In that case, the services would be allowable by the municipality with maybe a sunset clause, or just maybe forever, as long as it keeps going with the Ministry of Environment. So that's what I would suggest that could be included in in a report and in your consideration when you're looking at your budget and your wish list and what you want to do and what you cannot do. These are tried and proven methods, going on for 40 years now. The second thing, this is not really infrastructure in a sense, but it has to do with sewage again, and it's the septic systems that are on Georgian Bay. If it's water and sustainability we want to see, we want, something better than just a septic tank, 50 feet from the shore. With no maintenance, nobody knows what's going on. Is there a straight pipe out to the bay? We don't know. Bringing a sewer out to all of the cottages and beach houses out on the beaches that we have in Meaford is difficult. But I think personally, I think something needs to be done to bring us up to a better level. So basically modular sewage systems for industrial parks, 100 house subdivision, that type of thing. In the interim until the sewer comes, or maybe it doesn't need to come. In a lot of places, it doesn't really need to come. I'm all for municipal sewers in municipalities and the treatment plants, and I think Meaford's doing a very good job. I follow it occasionally, except for phosphorus, if you're looking at the future of Georgian Bay and to keep it's not pristine now, but it's a good quality lake or bay. We need to clean up the shoreline. We don't know what's going on, but people are just putting sewage into the ground and that's it. So those two things for your thoughts. That's thank you.
Thanks, Craig. I'm wondering, with our wastewater master plan, what we have thus far, I don't think we're really considering we're considering an expansion of usage. We expect more residences in the urban area, but I think you're talking about Georgian Beach, Kiowana, Cedar Drive. And servicing them with municipal.
Well,
Is that what you're suggesting?
ideally, that would be the best. That can be done, but very expensive. But keeping the environment clean and health wise too, it's expensive. We all know that. We've done it before. We can do it again. But to attract industry, and if we don't have the services there, we want them here next year, and there's no sewers. The modular system for equivalent of 100 houses or 500 houses, that type of thing, can be done. Relatively, it can be privatized. Municipalities don't necessarily like that idea typically, but it can be done, and that's one option. And then we have to consider what we should do about the beach houses. They're polluting the ground in my mind. I understand septic systems, and there needs to be something done. We can't just sort of ignore it, continuously ignore it all the time.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, Victoria, go ahead.
Through Councillor Greenfield, I'm happy to provide a little bit of comment to that. I do know of municipalities or townships that do have inspection programs of septic systems. Septic doesn't fall under our my department and under Public Works or infrastructure. And so as of right now, the building department does the inspection and when things are put in the ground, but there's potential that that could be an added service if it's something that council wishes to add on top of what is currently happening, as some municipalities or different townships are doing inspections. I know Tiny Township, for instance, has a septic inspection program that they have for residents. And that's able to kind of catch some of those things that maybe are deficient that exist, or things that they're doing that they shouldn't be. So that is definitely something that we aren't currently doing, but some municipalities are. And with regards to the employment lands, with regards to funding, because the infrastructure would be needed for development, it would be funded through development charges or by the development itself, as it shouldn't impact, obviously, the existing residents of the system. And so we do at least have that avenue from a funding perspective for areas like the employment lands that have recently been purchased, but recognizing obviously these things still take staff's time. And so, we're always open to different opportunities, and also recognizing that at some point, the actual expansion to the wastewater treatment plant is needed, with how we're seeing growth right now in use production of sewage. We appear right now to be in an okay place and have provided ourselves enough time, hopefully, to get that expansion done with the growth we're seeing. But we recognize that there's interim solutions that we might always need to look at, and that could be different on-site treatment, whether it's at our current treatment plant or at specific development. So I do appreciate your comments on that, because it is always great to obviously hear of different experiences of what people have done in different locations to help support proper treatment, but maybe in different ways.
Go ahead.
Yeah, one small caveat, inspection system, the septic system can meet code 100%, but it'll still be polluting the groundwater with, different types of chemicals that are like the simple thing is ammonium, and that's for fish and that type of thing. So personally, an inspection program wouldn't help. It's a long-term thing, but I think people should recognize that this type of thing does occur. And Wasaga Beach, for instance, was looked at and found it wanting, even though I think there's decent. Well, it's the same as us over here. Got good sand on top of heavy clay. The private, as for the modular systems, the cost would be by the owner, of course, and but it's just a matter of the municipality even allowing those types of systems is the key. That I might suggest that they do allow them, and other people have allowed them, and it's a good way of bringing in development in a modular way too. Thank you.
Okay. Anything further? Yes, Eric.
Thank you. I don't know if this is would count as an inquiry, but just one of the bits of feedback to future advisory committees would be if staff are able to provide sort of like compile and then provide a list of essentially like essential pre-reading, and from the scope of an investing in infrastructure committee, and I'm sure for any other committee there would be a set of really important documents, but I could imagine things like just how like the DC study, how DCs work, how reserves work, how all those funding streams actually come together to make things happen. Even things like municipal organizational charts. So everybody kind of knows who's working on what and what department handles what thing and stuff like that. So it might be worth putting some thought into that to like hand a package over and say, here's how it, everything works. Here's how we get it done. And you can use that to provide, sort of more targeted, accurate advice.
Yeah, and maybe in the future, council during budget deliberations did get I think a five-year infrastructure plan. What roads, bridges, et cetera, we're planning on doing over the next 5 years. So maybe just a copy of that would be appreciated by the committee members. And again, those are forecasted projects and they do get changed on occasion, but it might be wise for the committee to see what's coming up and maybe comment, are we concentrated too much on LCB and HCB and not enough on asphalt, or just an information sheet. It's would be, I think, fairly simple to provide, and again, there's more information. Anything further? Okay, well now we do have number 9, which is communications, and some people might wonder, well, why are you worried about communications when this is the last meeting of the committee? But I think is always an opportunity for communications with the municipality. So the committee will consider correspondence received by members of the public during each meeting. To share your comments, thoughts, or concerns with members of the committee, the public can send an email to the Legislative Services Coordinator at dbruce@meaford.ca, and I know personally that Derek is very good at responding to emails. When emails are received to this email address, they will be compiled into a correspondence list, which is then distributed to committee members prior to the meeting. The cover sheet of this list will be included on each meeting agenda. The contents of the correspondence list are not included on the public agenda to protect the privacy and personal information of those residents who choose to send in their thoughts and comments. And once again, I want to say that any of the committee members who have thoughts or opinions in the future, we're going to be here for you. We'll appreciate your input. The date of the next meeting, well, we'll have to wait for that. And, so if there's nothing more, I want to thank the committee members, thanks staff, thanks members of the public, thanks to the guy back here in the corner for helping us out. And I'll call the meeting adjourned at 3:03. Thank you.